to talk about a really neat and totally free professional photography trick. We all know about gobos, at least most people do, about how you could actually cut out silhouettes. Let me get this off. I got a wireless trigger on an SB28 I had in a chair over here with a space blanket. I've got a few shots below. You can check the links to see what I'm talking about. And don't comment on the quality of the pictures because they're just a picture of a shell to prove an example of what you can do. I can't spend all day taking test shots of everything. See this little cutout? I actually have superimposed circles, kind of like a bubble on top of a bubble. And then I have this little card. I've actually cut out a little pattern that's kind of like a snowflake. What if, for example, my light is too overpowering and I want to shoot at f1.2, like I was doing on this 56mm? What if I can take advantage of two things, kill two birds with one stone, cut down my light, still shoot at f1.2, and yet add dramatic bokeh effects with whatever pattern I can dream of? Now, I see a lot of people do goofy stuff, like they'll cut out hearts and they'll take a picture of a tree, and then the tree lights, like on a Christmas tree, will look like hearts or, a smiley face. And it's like, well, isn't that cute? And, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. It's a bit cheesy. What about true effects that you could actually use on a daily basis that are very, very simple? And if you had to make one up on the fly, all you'd have to do is have a pack of scissors and a piece of black construction paper with you. For example, if I wanted to take a shot outdoors, and I layered the light in the links below that you'll see. I used a primary light for my subject, which was a shell. It could be a person's face, a baby, anything that you want. It has basically the same reflectance as human skin tone does. And I added a space blanket behind me, but it could be city lights, it could be anything. I want to shoot at f1.2 or f1.4. I want to add some speed lights, background illumination, or add some bokeh behind, but even at 1/64th power, if I'm not going to do high-speed sync photography, and you don't have to, you can cut down the light. It's like, well, I'm already dialed down to my base ISO at 200, and I'm already at my max sync speed at 250th of a second. Technically, it's 180 on this camera, but it does work at 250th of a second. But I want to shoot at f1.2. I don't want to dial it up to f4. I want to actually shoot at f1.2 or f1.4. Very, very simple. And if you wanted to do a really simple one, actually take a piece of black construction paper, cut out a circle about the size of a $50. And what I did in the shots you'll see in the links below is I actually took the shots. I used a speedlight illumination pointed at a space blanket behind me. One of the ones that I did was this snowflake pattern, which took me about 5 seconds to cut out, and I held it like this. What I first did was I actually focused in on my subject. I got confirmation of focus, and then I held it out about 6 inches so I could actually see where the light was emanating from. So far as zeroing, whoops, I hit the microphone. So far as zeroing this pattern over the dead center of the lens, that's incredibly easy. Of course, it's going to be out of focus. You've already locked in focus on your subject. I zero it in, I can actually see the light fall off or increase. Zeroing it is incredibly easy, and I take the picture. That's all I did. So I shot at f1.2 at the 56mm Fuji at my lowest ISO, 200 base ISO, and my maximum sync speed of 250 of a second. But if I didn't have these, I could not shoot at that aperture. And only am I adding a secondary aperture, and it doesn't have to be a snowflake pattern like this, which you can actually see represented in the pictures below, but I could just use a simple oval pattern and cut down on the light so that I can shoot. It allows me to shoot without doing high-speed sync photography at an aperture of f1.2. But if I wanted to add a secondary effect to that, like, here's an example, and it'll take you 5 seconds to cut it out of a piece of black construction paper. Let's say I have a model laying on the bed, and there's a bunch of lights behind her. I'm going to shoot her at f1.4. Let's say, let's take a standing model outside, and I have some city lights behind her. I can actually, if I have a standing model, I can just cut out a oval in the vertical position on this piece of paper, And if I wanted to change the bokeh of the surrounding city lights, all I'd have to do is cut in whatever pattern I wanted those to represent. My model would come out perfectly. There'd be a slight vignetting, not as much as you think. Okay, you have to understand the physics of light, and most people have no idea what the physics of light is. Phase disparity, how you can actually change how something shifts by simply changing the pattern, which is basically kind of the premise of the double slit experiment. How you can actually have reinforcing waves, and you can have deconstructive waves, so you have to have interference patterns. Anytime you actually make a bokeh cutout like this, what it does is it causes phase disparity and interference patterns, and it makes for really, really interesting bokeh. You can actually make dual light. What is there's a link below in the 3 pictures. You can actually see what I'm talking about. You can actually see the bokeh of the lights shining off the mylar blanket, which would be the same as city lights or anything that's out of focus, reflections off of tree leaves or anything like that. You can actually add a secondary layer of bokeh to your portraits outdoors by simply changing the fact that the light is not only passing through a smaller main aperture, but it's also passing through additional apertures, whether they be circular apertures or they're little arrow patterns like that. I chose little arrow patterns. If you wanted to make a quarter-size circle to cut down on the light so you could shoot at f1.2 or 1.4, for example, that's fine for your main subject. But then I would add additional circles off here in either random places or even places, and the light is also passing through there. So what happens is, not only have you changed the nature of the bokeh, of the out-of-focus background separation of your subject, but you've also added another layer, so you actually have dimensionality to the bokeh. And you can actually see in the example I give you below that not only have I interfered with the nature of the light, the specular light in the background that is out of focus, but I've also given it depth and dimensionality by causing it to pass through multiple apertures of my choosing. Okay? Multiple apertures of my choosing. So you can either do one of 2 things, or you can do both things. You can cut down on the light, or you can cut down on the light and change the nature of the bokeh. In the next video here, we're going to talk about something that nobody else talks about, and the reason why like a 70 to 200 and a 300 millimeter give you not at f2.8, for example, not simply a shallow depth of field, but true subject isolation. Because there's a difference between shallow depth of field and true subject isolation, and this is incredibly important for portraiture photography and fashion photography and model photography. So we'll go on to that video, but take a look at the test shots below and you'll see what I'm talking about. Obviously they're not exciting pictures, they're examples. And if you can think of anything that is harder than cutting out a little bit of construction paper and holding it up to your camera and going like this. Okay, first I'm going to focus, and I'm going to place this in front of here. I'm going to zero it in so I can actually see that I'm centered on my pattern. Click. Okay, focus, place in front, click. Very, very, very simple. The effects are dramatic. They're beautiful. You can make them any shape that you want. You can cut down on your light without going into high-speed sync mode. Everything is about layering light and having control of your lighting ratios. I had a primary light shining on my subject, and I had a secondary light, my background light, which was all the way dialed down to 1/64th, but it was still too much. It's like, well, I don't want to, raise my aperture from f1.2 to f2.8 on this lens. Hey, I bought this f1.2 lens for a reason. Well, sure, you can slap a neutral density filter on the front for 60, 80 bucks. Or how about it's not going to change the nature of anything. I'm actually still shooting through another aperture. I don't have another layer that my subject is focused through when I actually place this in front of my camera lens. There's no glass here that is interfering with the actual image rendition as far as its color saturation and resolution. But I'm able to cut down on the light and use that same aperture by adding a secondary aperture of my choosing to either cut down on the light or cut down on the light and change the nature of the bokeh. Now in the example you'll see below, you'll see which one is the what I call it layered bubbling. When you actually create a pattern like this, which is a circle with overlapping circle cutouts, this creates a three-dimensional pattern of bokeh rendering, where the bokeh is not only altered but shaped to your choosing, and that's very interesting. And there's 100,000 different patterns you can cut out. Okay. Now, they shouldn't be like smiley faces and cubes and all this other stuff, but you need to visualize how the light is affected by passing through these multiple apertures. Now, cutting a simple half circle, size of a $50, cutting down the light, that is easy to explain. But if you're able to visualize a single light flash, boom, either be it background light or main light, as it's passing through multiple apertures, an aperture shaped of your choosing, then you're able to realize really fascinating effects that really cannot be duplicated in Photoshop. Or they actually almost could be at great cost of time. Time is money. So check the pictures out. Like I said, they're not exciting pictures. They're just test examples showing you the potential of what you can do for free, for very, 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 it's easier to hold, to focus and place this in front of the camera than it is to screw on a damn filter. So I don't know what you'd be bitching about. It doesn't cost anything. While you're sitting there scratching your butt eating Cheetos watching television, why don't you try this? Because with my power dialed all the way down on my flash, and having enough illumination from my subject on my primary, I could not shoot this at f1.2. But using these I could, but not change the resolution, sharpness, and color saturation of the subject that I've shot. And that's a win-win. Okay? Thanks for watching. Catch you later. And oh, by the way, everybody should buy a 99-cent Mylar space blanket, but make sure you get not just a silver one, which is silver, but get a dual-layered one, which is silver on one side and gold on the other. Like this. And the more you wrinkle it and the worse you treat it, the better the pictures look. This is when you get it, you should wrinkle it up, unfold it, wrinkle it up, and do that like a dozen times, and then it's perfecto. Okay? So, catch you later. Bye. Oops, I dropped my hot shoe cap.